Before I begin, I would like you to take a second and look back at your childhood. Do you think you will be the same person you are today if something significant has changed as a child? For me, as a child, I was always fascinated with serial killers. I always loved how their mind worked. What made them want to kill? How could they take a human life? What were their motives? What they acted on? What happened during their childhood? Who made them like that? My name is Brittany, and today I'm going to talk to you about Park Young-Chul. Park Young-Chul was a South Korean serial killer whose murders took place from 2003 to 2004. He murdered 26 people. Before we begin talking about his murders, we have to look at the beginning, his childhood. Because I believe some people's childhood affects into who they eventually grow into. As a child, Park Young-Chul was a juvenile. His parents didn't really have much money, and his classmates would always pick on him and bully him. So early on, that planted his resentment for the rich. That planted his resentment towards the rich, and he was in and out of prison a lot as a child, especially during his high school years, and then he would eventually go into prison. Go to prison for a long time, and eventually get out. After he got out of prison, that's when he would actually start most of his murders. He had many motives. One of his main motives was resentment towards the rich, and then his second motive was resentment towards sex workers. Next, I'm going to talk to you about why his motives were his motives, and why, and describe how he actually killed his victims. His motives towards the resentment went back towards his childhood, but according to Absolute Crown, the reason why he murdered sex workers was due to his hatred for another lover that left him while he was in prison. He would mostly kill the wealthy people in their own home, but for sex workers, he would lure them in off the street into his own apartment, and then he would mess with them, have relations with them, and after he was done, then he would bash them over the head with a hammer, his signature hammer, and then he will cut them up in pieces and put them in a trash bag, and then he will bury them somewhere humid so the body would decompose faster. He did this to 26 people. Before I talk about the downfall, I would like to talk to you about one interesting fact that I actually found really interesting. All the local pimps, the criminals, where he lived at, knew about his signature style and his killings. So they were really afraid of him. So they would team up with the local police to try to catch him at the end. Now, lastly, I would like to talk to you about his downfall. In the summer of 2004, the police finally caught up to him. And when they finally caught him, he confessed to all 26 murders, but he was only arrested for 21 counts, for killing 21 people. What's crazy is he actually showed the police where the bodies were. And during his court, the judge, would eventually sentence him to death. And that's where he sits now. He sits on death row. He's been sent there since 2004. In conclusion, Park Young-Chul, nicknamed the Raincoat Killer by some, was a serial killer who murdered around 26 people, but was only convicted of murdering 21, but was convicted with 21 counts of murder instead of 26. He sits at the Seoul Detention Center on death row at the moment. Thank you. Goodbye.